You know that feeling when someone new sits at a table where someone you loved used to sit? It doesn't matter how nice they are. It doesn't matter if they bring food or smile or try to help. All you see is the empty chair that shouldn't be empty. That was Ethan's life for a year and a half after his mother passed away. His father, Mark, waited a respectful time, at least that's what the relatives said, and then he remarried. Her name was Nora. And Ethan hated her before she ever unpacked a single box. It wasn't anything Nora did, not at first. She cooked meals that weren't quite right. She asked polite questions about school. She left Ethan's mother's photographs exactly where they were, never moving a single frame. But Ethan watched her like a security camera. Every time she laughed, he wondered what she was hiding. Every time she whispered on the phone, he stepped closer to the doorframe. He told himself he was being careful. His father had moved on too fast. This woman had appeared out of nowhere. Something didn't add up. The cracks started showing about 2 months after the wedding. Ethan noticed Nora stepping into the backyard to take calls. Not just once or twice. Every evening, around the same time, she would slip out the back door with her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice would drop so low that Ethan couldn't catch a single word, even when he pressed his ear to the kitchen window. Then came the meetings. She started coming home late from work, claiming she had stopped for groceries or grabbed coffee with a friend. But there were never any groceries. And she never mentioned a name. Ethan tried to tell his father. One night at dinner, he said, "Does Nora have a lot of friends you've never met?" Mark looked up from his plate, confused. "She's a private person," he said. "Give her time." That was it. That was all the help Ethan got. So he decided to handle it himself. He began keeping a mental log. Tuesday, Nora leaves the house at 7:15 p.m., returns at 9:40 p.m. Says she went for a drive. Wednesday, he hears her say the name Richard on the phone, then immediately hang up when he walks into the room. Thursday, he finds a small spiral notebook tucked inside her desk drawer. It's locked. Not with a combination, but with a cheap silver lock he could probably break with a paper clip. He doesn't break it. Not yet. But he takes a picture of the drawer. Weeks passed. Ethan stopped saying hello to Nora in the mornings. He stopped eating dinner at the table, carrying his plate to his room instead. Mark noticed, but said nothing, probably hoping the phase would pass. It didn't. One Saturday, Nora announced she had to run an errand. She put on a coat that was too heavy for the weather and left the house looking over her shoulder. Ethan waited exactly 90 seconds. Then he followed her. He stayed half a block behind, ducking into a doorway whenever she turned around. She walked to a small park near the river, the kind with rusted benches and old sycamore trees. A man was already sitting on the second bench from the left. Mid-40s, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. Nora sat down next to him. They talked for almost 20 minutes. She handed him something small, an envelope, thin enough to hold a single piece of paper. Then she stood up and walked away without looking back. Ethan's heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. He waited for the man to leave, then approached the bench. Nothing. Just dried leaves and scratched initials. But he had seen enough. He walked home in a daze, rehearsing what he would say to his father. Then he remembered the notebook. The locked drawer. The silver lock he could probably break with a paper clip. That night, when Mark was working late and Nora had gone upstairs to shower, Ethan opened the drawer. He didn't break the lock. He found the key taped underneath the desk. His fingers were shaking as he turned it. The notebook was small, the size of a checkbook. The handwriting inside was not Nora's. He recognized it immediately. It was his mother's. The first page said only, "If you're reading this, something went wrong. Go to Nora. She will explain." Ethan sat down on the floor of the study, his back against the desk, and flipped through page after page. Dates. Transfers. Account numbers. Names of people he had never heard of. His father's name appeared 8 times, always next to amounts that made no sense for a man who worked a normal office job. The last page was dated 3 weeks before his mother died. It said, "I didn't know until it was too late. Nora knows everything. She promised to protect Ethan. She is the only one I trust." Ethan closed the notebook. He sat in the dark for a long time. Then he walked upstairs and knocked on Nora's door. She opened it with a towel on her head, still drying her hair. One look at his face, and she knew. "You found it," she said. Not a question. He held up the notebook. "My mother wrote this." Nora stepped aside. "Come in. Sit down. And don't say anything until I've told you everything." She talked for 45 minutes. The story came out in pieces, some of them jagged. Mark, Ethan's father, had been involved in financial schemes for years, nothing violent, nothing that would land him in a prison movie, but enough to ruin lives. He had taken money from small investors, promising returns he never intended to deliver. Ethan's mother discovered the truth by accident, going through tax documents one April afternoon. She confronted Mark. He promised to stop. He didn't. Instead, he got smarter about hiding the trail. By the time she realized he had no intention of changing, she was already sick. She didn't go to the police because she was afraid. Not for herself. For Ethan. If Mark was exposed, the family would collapse. There would be legal battles, frozen accounts, and no guarantee that Ethan would be protected. So she made a different choice. She reached out to an old college friend, Nora. They hadn't spoken in years, but Nora was an investigator, someone who knew how to document evidence without being detected. Ethan's mother handed over everything: bank statements, emails, voice recordings she had made during arguments with Mark. Then she asked Nora to marry Mark after she was gone. Ethan blinked. "She asked you to marry him?" Nora nodded. She knew he would remarry eventually. She wanted someone inside the house. Someone who could watch over you and keep the evidence safe until you were old enough to decide what to do with it. I didn't want to do it. I told her it was insane. But she was dying, Ethan. She was dying, and she was terrified that Mark would destroy the documents the moment she was buried. So I said yes. Ethan thought about all the phone calls, the secret meetings, the notebook in the locked drawer. None of it was betrayal. It was protection. Every time Nora had stepped into the backyard to whisper, she had been talking to lawyers and financial forensic experts. Every time she had met the man in the baseball cap, she had been handing over copies of evidence for safekeeping. She had spent 2 years of her life pretending to be a stepmother while actually being a guardian, a spy, and a witness all at once. "I have enough to put him away for a long time," Nora said quietly. "But that's your call. Not mine. Your mother wanted you to have the choice. If you want to burn the notebook and pretend none of this happened, I'll walk away tonight and never mention it again. If you want to go to the authorities, I'll stand next to you the whole way." Ethan sat in silence. The voice in his head, the one that had hated Nora for months, had nothing left to say. He looked at this woman who had cooked him dinners he refused to eat, who had asked polite questions he refused to answer, who had let him hate her because that was the only way to keep him safe. He had been searching for an enemy. He had found something else. "Thank you," he said. His voice cracked. "I'm sorry I was so." Nora shook her head. "Don't. You were supposed to be suspicious. That's what your mother loved about you. You don't accept things at face value. That's not a flaw. That's the whole reason I'm still here." He didn't burn the notebook. He didn't call the police that night either. But he sat on the edge of Nora's bed, and for the first time since his mother died, he let someone pull him into a hug without pulling away first. He still had hard decisions ahead. His father was not the man he had believed him to be. The life he thought he knew was built on lies. But he wasn't alone anymore. He never had been.